There are moments in history that feel like the closing of a book, yet somehow the story never truly ends. They say all empires fall, that no matter how mighty, how vast, how divine a nation may seem, time humbles them all. But what if one didn't? What if the Eternal City truly lived up to its name? Picture it, Rome, not as ruins bathed in the golden light of nostalgia, but as a living colossus stretching across centuries. Its legions no longer wielding spears and shields, but commanding satellites and cities among the stars. The Colosseum glowing not with the blood of gladiators, but the hum of human progress. What if Rome never fell? Would the world be a utopia of unity and order, or a gilded cage forged by ambition? Would humanity have reached the heavens sooner, or would the fire of innovation have died beneath the empire's shadow? Tonight, we step beyond the ashes of history and walk the roads Rome never built to glimpse the world that might have been. ChatGPT said, "There is a kind of silence that only history knows, the silence between what was and what could have been." Now imagine for a moment a Rome that never knew that silence. A Rome that never crumbled under its own weight, never saw its banners torn from the marble of its temples, never watched its emperors fade into the pages of memory. Instead, picture the Eternal City still alive, her heartbeat echoing through every corner of the world. The year is not 476 AD. The year historians say Rome fell. No, in this world, Rome endures. The legions never disbanded. They evolved. Gone are the sandals and the bronze shields, replaced by iron and steam, by machines of industry bearing the proud crest of the history of Rome. Roads now stretch not just across continents, but across oceans, arteries of civilization carrying the lifeblood of progress. In this timeline, the Roman eagle soars still, not above battlefields, but above cities that gleam beneath eternal order. Imagine it. Towering structures of marble fused with glass, aqueducts stretching beyond horizons, cities built with the precision of Roman engineering and the ambition of gods. Latin is not a language studied by scholars, but the common tongue of the human race. A farmer in the provinces of Africa speaks it as fluently as a merchant in Londinium or an engineer in the eastern reaches of what was once Persia. Under the ever-watchful eye of the empire, the chaos of the Dark Ages never comes. Knowledge that fragile flame, once smothered by war and ruin, burns brighter than ever. The libraries of Alexandria never fall to ash. The scholars of Athens debate alongside Roman architects and Egyptian astronomers. Together they lay the foundations of a world centuries ahead of its time. Steam engines hum through the streets of Rome as early as the 10th century. Electricity lights the Pantheon before the Renaissance ever dawns. And perhaps humanity reaches for the stars, not in the 20th century, but in the 12th. But the world is not made of triumph alone. There is weight in this vision, the kind that bends the back of the world. For the price of eternal unity is eternal control. Freedom is the first casualty of order. The Senate, once a chamber of debate, becomes a council of destiny. The voice of dissent is quieted not by the sword, but by silence itself. Every child born within the empire is born into a world where loyalty is law and obedience the highest virtue. Still, there is peace, there is progress, there is purpose, and for countless souls that is enough. The people of this unbroken Rome grow up in cities where crime is rare, where hunger is unknown, where knowledge flows like water through the veins of society. To live in the empire is to live in the heart of civilization itself. Perhaps in this timeline, Rome becomes what it always dreamed of being, not merely a kingdom of men, but a civilization eternal, not defined by conquest, but by creation, not remembered for the fall that never came, but for the light it carried forward through the ages. And maybe, just maybe, if you stand in this imagined world long enough, you can still hear it, the echo of the Roman march. Not the sound of armies, but of generations moving forward in unbroken rhythm. The sound of destiny fulfilled. Because sometimes the greatest tragedy of history is not what was lost, but what might have been if Rome had truly lived forever. ChatGPT said, "They say that unity is humanity's oldest dream, and its hardest to keep." Now imagine a world where that dream was not just spoken, but enforced. Where one banner, one law, and one vision stretched from the Atlantic to the edges of the known world. A single empire, unbroken, unmatched, unchallenged, holding the world together beneath the reach of one hand. In this vision, the earth itself becomes unmatched powers. Borders no longer define nations, but regions, administrators, and From the icy fjords of Germania to the sands of Arabia, from the jungles of Africa to the misty highlands of Britannia, all kneel to the same law, the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. But peace can be a complicated thing. For centuries, mankind has fought to find balance between chaos and control, freedom and unity. And in this world, Rome has chosen unity at all costs. There are no crusades, no world wars, no fractured kingdoms clawing for power. There is only the empire, one government, one army, one destiny. Languages that once divided men fade into whispers of memory. Latin reigns supreme, efficient, precise, a symbol of order. Children in every corner of the world grow up reciting the same verses, pledging loyalty to the same idea, Roma, the eternal Rome. Science thrives without interruption. Philosophy blossoms under stability, and technology advances under the steady hand of imperial ambition. Cities glimmer with order and symmetry, the kind only Rome could build. Every metropolis bears the same heart, towering forums, vast libraries, monuments carved from the earth itself. You can travel from one end of the world to the other and still feel the same pulse, the heartbeat of Rome. And perhaps in this grand unity, humanity finds its first glimpse of global civilization. The first true world government, centuries before our own fractured attempts. Trade moves with lightning speed through roads paved by engineers whose names they will never forget. Medicine, law, education, all standardized, perfected, and enforced by the unyielding hand of Roman order. But beneath the marble perfection, a question lingers. What happens when every voice sings the same song? When diversity becomes a memory, and individuality a danger? A world united may be peaceful, but peace can come with a price. The price of silence. Imagine a poet in Gaul whose words challenge the Senate's decree. A thinker in Alexandria whose ideas stretch too far beyond the empire's comfort. Their voices echo through corridors of marble and vanish into the dark. In a world united under Rome, even imagination is covered, and yet there is something beautiful in it too. A vision of humanity without war, without borders, without hatred born from difference. A civilization where no child knows famine, no soldier dies for a flag, because there is only one flag, the golden eagle, watching over a peaceful, disciplined world. It is the dream of philosophers and conquerors alike to see mankind as one. But perhaps the lesson of this vision is not in the perfection of unity, but in its weight. For even the most magnificent empire must balance between order and freedom, power and compassion. Still, in this imagined world, Rome endures as the mother of civilization, not just ruling the earth, but shaping it into a single beating heart, humanity's first true home. There are moments in history when a spark of human genius ignites a flame so bright it changes everything. In our world, that spark came late. In the Renaissance, 1,000 years after Rome's fall. But imagine if that light had never been extinguished. If the flame of knowledge, instead of fading into darkness, had burned brighter than ever under an empire that never crumbled. In this world, the Roman Empire becomes the cradle not just of civilization, but of innovation. A place where philosophers walk hand in hand with inventors, and emperors fund the dreams of visionaries instead of wars of conquest. The fall of Rome never comes, so neither does the Dark Age. The libraries of Alexandria, Athens, and Antioch stand tall, their shelves heavy with scrolls of science, mathematics, and philosophy. And from those scrolls, a new world begins to rise. By the 10th century, Roman engineers are no longer carving roads through forests. They're carving pathways through the stars. Imagine legions not of soldiers, but of scholars. Laboratories glowing beside marble temples. Steam engines hissing through the streets of the eternal city centuries before the Industrial Revolution. In the skies above, airships bearing the golden eagle drift between continents, their hulls crafted by hands that once forged gladian armor. The aqueducts no longer just carry water. They pulse with the energy of early electricity, power flowing through copper veins across an empire of progress. The Senate, once a chamber of politics, becomes a council of science. They debate not war, but wonder. Should they reach for the moon? Harness the thunder? Command the very elements themselves? I know, the cities. The heart of this imagined Rome beats and lights in marble, colossal structures of glass buildings and mechanical marvels. Steam trains whistle through arches of triumph. Mechanical birds soar over the Tiber. Scholars in Alexandria whisper theories of atoms and galaxies, Mathematicians in Carthage craft machines that think. Primitive computers centuries before their time. Medicine leaps forward. Diseases that once ravished humanity are conquered before they begin. Roman surgeons wield steel instruments with precision guided by centuries of uninterrupted knowledge. Death from plague becomes a story, not a fear. And yet, for all this brilliance, the empire still carries its old ghosts, for progress without pause can breed enemies. When one civilization holds all the light, it begins to believe the darkness can never return. And so Rome, in this timeline, faces its greatest challenge, not rebellion, not invasion, but pride. Imagine an empire so powerful it builds mechanical gods, machines of logic and order that govern daily life. The people begin to forget what it means to dream freely, to create from chaos. Every discovery is sanctioned, every invention cataloged by the Imperial Academy. The flame of curiosity burns bright, but within the lanterns of control. And yet beneath it all, the soul of Rome remains what it always was, relentless, unyielding, hungry for more. It was never in Rome's nature to stop. Whether conquering lands or conquering knowledge, the empire presses onward, driven by the same fire that once burned in the hearts of Caesar and Constantine. So perhaps in this world where Rome never fell, the Renaissance does not wait for the 15th century. It arrives 1,000 years early, a thunderclap of genius echoing across time, and humanity beneath the watchful eyes of the empire learns to build not just cities of stone, but dreams made real. Because when Rome's ambition and human imagination walk side by side, the world itself becomes the empire. Every empire dreams of eternity, but eternity always demands a price. In this world where Rome never fell, where its banners still crown the horizon, that price is not paid in blood, but in silence. For an empire that conquers the world must also conquer the soul. Imagine an earth draped in the grandeur of Roman order, cities of shining marble and glass, roads that thread across continents, legions not of warriors, but of enforcers clad in iron and law. The world is peaceful, eerily peaceful. Crime is rare, rebellion is elite. The Senate rules not just nations, but thought itself. And though the people live in comfort, they live within walls far higher than they can see. Freedom, once the birthright of man, has been rewritten into obedience. The Senate calls it stability. The people call it destiny. And so life moves forward, precise, sufficient, unchanging. The empire has achieved what all others could not control without chaos. But beneath that perfection, something human begins to fade. There are no revolutions here. No cries of defiance echo through the marble streets. Art exists, but only as beauty approved. Music plays, but only in harmony sings. The philosophers who once challenged gods now whisper their doubts behind closed doors. For in this Rome eternal, the greatest crime is not treason, it is independence. Imagine a poet in Britannia who dares to write of freedom. His words caught in the gears of bureaucracy before they ever reach the light of day. A sculptor in Hispania who carves the likeness of a broken chain, her masterpiece quietly removed from its pedestal before dawn. And in every corner of this mighty world, people smile beneath the golden eagle, but their eyes tell stories of dreams they no longer dare to speak. This is the shadow of eternity, the weight of a world where perfection leaves no room for possibility. Yet the irony runs deep. The empire that once feared chaos now depends on it. The same fire that once built its greatness, curiosity, ambition, rebellion, now lies buried beneath its foundations. Progress continues, yes, but it moves like a machine, predictable, cold, stripped of wonder. The empire has conquered everything except the restless spirit of mankind. And there, within that silence, rebellion begins again, not with swords or armies, but with whispers. A young philosopher in the academies of Rome begins to question the cost of peace. A scientist hides forbidden ink beneath the catacombs of Alexandria. A painter slips a single unapproved color into a portrait, a color that stirs the hearts of those who see it. The empire may silence voices, but it cannot silence the spark that makes us human. Because even in a world ruled by marble and law, the human heart beats wild. And perhaps that is the true tragedy and triumph of this Rome that never fell. It learned to master the earth, but not its. So when night falls over the eternal city and the stars reflect on its endless monuments, there is a stillness. The empire stands unbroken, unbent, untouched by time. But somewhere, deep beneath the marble, beneath the weight of history, you can still hear it. whisper of rebellion. The sound of humanity reminding eternity that it was never meant to last forever. Empires may crumble, but their echoes never die. Even as the last Roman eagle faded from the sky, the soul of Rome did not vanish. It transformed. It slipped quietly into the veins of the world, hidden in our cities, our laws, our languages, our dreams. Rome, in truth, never truly fell. It merely changed its face. Look around you. The world we live in still carries the fingerprints of that ancient empire. The concrete beneath your feet, Roman invasion. The letters you read, the calendars you trust, the legal codes that define right and wrong, all born beneath the shadow of the Colosseum. Every courthouse, every parliament, every republic is a child of the Roman idea. That power can be structured. That law can outlive kings. That civilization itself can be engineered. The Romans built more than cities. They built a blueprint for how the world would think. You can still hear their echoes in the language of science and faith, in the architecture of our capitals, in the discipline of our armies, in the structure of our empire. Even the dreams of modern nations, to expand, to unify, to endure, are but reflections of the same old ambition that once beat in the heart of Caesar's Rome. But perhaps the greatest echo of all lies not in stone or steel, but in the human spirit. The same will that once drove Rome to rise from a humble village by the Tiber still burns in us today. The hunger to build, to conquer the impossible, to leave something eternal behind. And so, in a way, we live in the world dreamed of, connected in a shared language of law and progress. A civilization that reaches for the stars instead of the sword. But the question remains, have we truly learned from her story? For Rome's legacy is not only triumph, it is warning. Every bridge it built, every empire it inspired, carries the lesson carved deep into time, that no matter how great our walls, how vast our power, we are still human, prone to pride, to greed, to forgetting what made us rise in the first place. Yet even in that truth, there is... Because if the fall of Rome could not erase its essence, then perhaps nothing can erase the best within us. Every time we choose unity over division, creation over destruction, wisdom over arrogance, we answer Rome's ancient call. We build upon her dream without repeating her mistakes. So when you walk beneath the arches of a modern city or stand before the columns of justice, know this, you are walking in the footsteps of ghosts, not of conquerors, but of builders, not of tyrants, but of dreamers who believe that mankind could carve eternity from dust. Rome may have fallen in history, but in spirit, she endures in us, in every road that leads forward, in every nation that seeks greatness, in every human heart that refuses to surrender. The empire is gone, but its light remains. And as long as we remember what it stood for and what it cost, the flame of Rome will never fade. Because the truth is simple, Rome never truly fell. It merely became us. And so, the story comes full circle. The marble may have cracked, the temples may have fallen to dust, but the dream, the idea of Rome, still walks beside us. It lives in every towering skyline, in every courtroom where justice is weighed, in every nation that dares to call itself a republic. We, the children of time, are still living in the echo of her heartbeat. Rome was not just a city. It was a mirror, reflecting both the glory and the fragility of human ambition. It taught us that greatness without humility is a storm without end. That power without wisdom is a sword that cuts its own hand, and that no empire, no matter how mighty, can outlive the character of its people. So the question, my friends, is not what if Rome never fell. The question is, will we? Will we learn from the echoes of history or repeat them beneath new banners and brighter lights? Will we build worlds of justice or walls of pride? The fate of Rome was not written in marble. It was written in men. In the same pen, the same choice rests now in our hand. When we look to the stars and dream of new worlds, we are doing what Rome once did. So tonight, as we stand beneath the same stars that once shone over the eternal city, remember this. Empires rise, empires fall, but the ideas worth keeping, they endure. Carry them forward. Build something that lasts longer than stone, something worthy of the echoes of Rome. Because maybe, just maybe, the eternal city never truly died. It simply became the world we live in.